Hello everyone, this is Mel here. Welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of my take a look and review of Disciples of Bones and Shadow, the Conquered Sun edition. So last time we have gone through first half of the book where we gone through the character creation, the core rules, which includes the details of how you explore the world, so how you do the hex crawl as well as the dungeon crawl. One thing I want to mention is that I think for the first half of the book is actually also available in the basic edition of Disciples of Bone and Shadow, which is a free PDF that you can download, and I think there's also a print-on-demand version on Drive-Thru RPG as well. But the difference between Conquered Sun Edition and the basic edition starts, I would say, from the Game Master emulation part. So in the basic edition, there is no need for a Game Master emulation because that is simply a hex crawl or dungeon crawl game where there is always a concrete objective that you as a player will need to achieve. The missions are designed in a way where there is not a lot of flexibility in terms of your narrative actions. Just to give you an example, in the basic edition, similar to any hex crawls or dungeon crawls like Fall Against Darkness, if you have a mission that you need to rescue a specific person, quite often the game would tell you that in the next dungeon you explore, every room there's a 1d6 chance that you will be able to find the person you need to rescue. And basically whenever you open a door, you need to roll a dice to see if that is the room. Or it might say the first fountain you encountered during your dungeon crawl will be your objective room where you will find a boss that you need to defeat. Now, in the Conquered Sun edition, that part is no longer in the game. So, depending on who you ask, it could be a good thing, or it could be a missed opportunity as well. The good thing is that what is being replaced is what Alex called scenes. So this is the core meat of the narrative freedom. Effectively, if you have ever played any solo role-playing games like Iron Sworn or the likes of Scarlet Hero, this is where the players are allowed to roleplay. What they're doing is that they establish a specific scene. It could be a specific moment where you are talking to a character, or this is when you are actually visiting a settlement, or even during a chase or during a specific battle actions. This is where you play out in details rather than simply roll a dice to see what happens. And the game did it in very similar ways to Iron Sworn as well as Scarlet Heroes, where you are basically the person who acts as the DM yourself by asking yourself questions and answering them using oracle tables. So if I'm going to show you what oracle tables are included, so for anyone who played any solo role-playing games, you will be very familiar with these kind of oracle tables. And normally we call them just yes-no tables, where you roll a dice to see the question that you ask, whether it's a yes or no, or yes-no but, if there's any complications included. So in that sense, Disciples of Bone and Shadow is very similar to that, where there's a D10 tables to answer your yes-no questions. There's a qualifier to include but or no, and there's also a complication table if you need some ideas on what that but means, for example. And on top of that, Disciples of Bones and Shadow also includes the surprise event, this is whenever you roll a twist during a scene, and I think that's very similar to how I played in the Dungeon Degenerates, where whenever you have a roleplay phrase in that game, in this case this is a scene being established, you need to roll a twist dice to see if there is a surprise event being introduced. The difference is obviously this is something that you can manage, so the surprise event only occurs when you roll a 1 out of d6. So there's basically only a very small chance, but this game also includes a modifier. So whenever you are in a situation where you are not in control, you will need to do a -1, and that's cumulative. So to give you an example, if our character is in a hostile environment where they're trying to sneak past some guards, they will basically have a -1 in their surprise event when they have a roll that dice. And if they continue to have multiple scenes where they are not in control, then that will cumulative, they will be added up as well. So the maximum is, for example, -3 in that sense. So there's a 50% chance that you will need to introduce a twist in that specific scene. Vice versa, if you are in control of the situation, for example, if you're in a friendly environment, then obviously there is less chance that you will need to roll out some kind of twist in that situation. So I think this is pretty straightforward, and there's also this typical action and theme tables that you can be able to find in similar games like Iron Swans, where you combine the action and the theme tables to get to a specific idea to explain your situation. So the next part is the mission and objectives and rumors. So this is the part where, as I mentioned, this is probably the some people will find a little bit lacking. So this part is very much like how I handled the quest generation in the Dungeon Degenerates tables, where you first of all need to roll on a specific type of mission. So it could be related to a location, item, individual, or event. And then you need to roll on the correspondent table. So let's say if it's related to a location, then you roll on the mission type of that is related to location. It could be loot, retake, assault, explore, and so forth. And then where is that location? There are also more details that you can roll on. For example, which region we're talking about, how you get to learn about this mission in the first place. So for those of you who don't want to think about which NPC gives you that mission, you might just roll on this to get that idea. And then there's details on how far it is from your current location, and how, is it on the same hacks, or is it going to be 10 hacks away? What is missing in this part is, as I mentioned, the mechanical part of it. So what I mean by that is, if you roll on assault a ruins, how do you qualify that as a successful mission? In any traditional hex crawl or dungeon crawls, there's always a concrete objective. So if it is something to, say, assault a ruins, it would probably say the 3rd elite enemies that you defeated will be considered as mission achieved. So you need to basically defeat 3 of them. You need to track them in your paper, and then once you get to the 3rd one, you can go back to your mission giver to get the rewards. Or if it's going to be, as I mentioned, something like destroy an enemy, then you can roll the dice to see whether the enemy is in a specific room, and you need to destroy that and then get out of the dungeon to call it a success. That part is missing here, and I would say that is a missed opportunity from my point of view, because that would truly elevate this solo role-playing game into something that is a complete gamified experience. Obviously, for games like this, there's a conscious decision that the designer made, and that is to allow player narrative freedoms to simply explain the mission in whatever way they want. And obviously you can still add back those mechanisms that I mentioned if you are a seasoned hex crawl player or dungeon crawl players. But what I mean is that I would prefer if there's also one more table including some of those typical mechanisms that people can use in hex crawls and dungeon crawls to generate a concrete mission target, for example. So as you can see, there are quite a lot of details that you can generate if you are more focused on the narrative side. So, you know, as you can see here, you can always generate a mission complication instead of just a surprise event, which again is pretty good for role playing. Rumors, where you can use this as the seed of generating a campaign mission, or even just some rumors that you have tracked in your player tracks, so that you can visit them later on. So the next part is the loot and gear. This is not this is not a very detailed loot, so there's no specific for example, if you look at the short bow, that's just every short bow will have the same values. So it's not into the nitty-gritty details where there's a different material that made of that. The shields are made of different materials and will worth different values. It is not included in this game, which I would say is fine by myself, because sometimes it's great to have 500 weapons to choose from. But ultimately, this is generalized into the type itself, and obviously, as a role player, you can decide it yourself how you can kind of adjust that into something that is more your liking. So you can obviously say a shield will be differentiated, whether it's an iron shield or it's made of steel, for example. They could have different values, or even different defense values. There are some artifacts included, D20s. These are the more interesting side. I have to say this is more on the mechanical artifacts rather than a gameplay changing artifacts. As you can see here, for example, this will give you a specific D plus D10 plus 3 damage with the minus 20 on the parry, dodge, and so forth. So it will give you really strong artifacts to use, but not all of them will have a specific gameplay change. And by that I mean by, for example, if you have this one, for example, this is a kind of like a mask that allows the users to take on the appearance of another person. And that is great because that means that you can effectively just change how you play the game in general, compared to others like just simply adding a DX damage. That is not the most interesting thing in the world. Okay, so that is the artifact. So there's quite a few of them. On the other side, there's the common available gears. As I mentioned, these are just really high level categorized items rather than a detailed item. So every helmet will be called a helmet and they will have the same values. Obviously, you can decide it whether that's the case yourself, but the game is designed that way. So this is the bestiary. So this game has quite an extensive bestiaries. There are 3 types. There are the vermins, there are the common enemies, and also the elite bestiaries. And you can see most of them do come with the full stacks, which is quite good, especially when we are talking about human encounters, because there's where you can do some role playing and the skill will come into play. And obviously when you're doing simple monsters like vermins, those are not necessary in that case. This game has a scaling system, as I mentioned in the previous video, where you can have a threat level that you can adjust based on the level of your player or your party. This is a TL2, so for example, you will use your threat level times 2 to get to the exact defense amount. Okay, so I'm not going to go through every single enemy. Okay, so this is the part where the game provides some lore or backgrounds to the world that you will be playing in. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to show you some of the maps. So it looks like this. And one of the nice things is that the author provided the individual regions lore. So for example, this area is called the Everstar Highlands. And you can basically see there's a huge crater in the middle, and I think that's also represented in the map as well, which is pretty nice. Okay. Again, some nice art. So this is where it gets more interesting as well. So this is exploring the locations. This part is supposed to be played together with the hex scroll part of it. So this basically allows you to roll a d20 dice to see what result you're going to get in that, or what kind of environment you're going to get in that specific hex. As I mentioned, most of them have a mechanical result. So this is where you can simply just play the game without thinking too much on generating a narrative yourself, like in other pure narrative role-playing games. So you can just play it out, go to the next hex, roll again, and play it out. And obviously there will sometimes be some narratives only encounters. So for example, this is a pilgrim. You come across a strange individual dressed in tunics. There's 6 of them carrying a statue, but there's no specific gameplay result. There's some questions included, asking who are these people, where are they headed. So that basically means that you have to ask yourself that question, go to the oracle tables to roll on what these people are doing, and so forth. And on the other side, you will have things like just generate a settlement. Again, this one is where you will go to that page and roll on the tables to generate the settlement into more details. So what I like about this is that each region will have its own exploration tables and its own encounters as well, which is very nice because it means that there's more incentives for you to travel from one region to another, just because it's either more safe or there's different kind of encounters that you will see. As you can see, there's quite a lot. And even for interior explorations as well, again, this is going to the dungeon dive part. There is, additional things that you can roll on to make your experience even more interesting, and there are details that you can roll to dress up your dungeon into more detail. So whether it's a temple, stronghold, small city, or it's a prison or tomb. Again, it has a different page for cave explorations, so that is very nice. And there's the your name generations. So after that, this will be the pre-written scenarios where you can just play it as is. There will be detailed scenario-based tables. There will also be your pre-written dungeons and so forth. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but what I want to show you here is so this is what I want to show at the end. This is the extended gameplay example, and I think this is a really nicely written part. And for anyone who's interested, I definitely recommend reading this part first, because it actually shows you how the game is designed to play with both hex crawl in mind, hex crawl and dungeon crawl in mind, and also with the narrative role playing in mind. And it shows you how the scenes are being set up. As I mentioned, you need to set up a scene, set up a twist modifier, and then you can basically role play it out into more details. And I think this is really nice, and this shows you how you can actually play both the mechanical part and also the narrative part together. Okay, this is the player sheet. So you can see there's quite a lot of things that you can track. You can also track each individual scenes, as well as the people you met and the story arcs as well. This is the potion tracker that I mentioned. You can just basically find out the what kind of recipes you need to create what potions. Okay, and this is the hex crawl and the dungeon crawl maps. So that's it for the game. This is the take a look of the Disciples of Bones and Shadow. Now, I would like to say that this is a very nice game indeed, that it is trying to basically combine the best of both worlds, the gameplay mechanism of hex crawl and dungeon crawl, with the narrative freedoms of the likes of Iron Sworn as well as Scarlet Heroes and so forth. And I think it's done a pretty good job, and the actual gameplay is more or still on the journal side, where you do have to write down quite a lot of details in order to make sense of the scenes or the story arc and so forth. So there will be quite a lot of writing involved. So for those of you who don't like to write down a lot of things, this is probably going to be still an issue for you. But for those of you who simply want more games in their narrative role-playing games, this is probably the best you can get as an all-in-one product at the moment. So that's my take a look and review. Thank you very much for watching. Next time I will be talking about a different kind of narrative role-playing games, and that is called A Torch in the Dark. Until then, I will talk to you later. Take care. Bye bye.